Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are wrestling with a concept that sounds simple but is, well, non-dually speaking, it's the ultimate intellectual knot. Radical acceptance. Now, if you're familiar with therapeutic psychology, maybe approaches like dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, you'll know radical acceptance. It's introduced as a really necessary tool. It's basically acknowledging reality as it is, right? Even when it's painful or seems unfair, because refusing to accept it just deepens the suffering. So our mission today is to go, quite a bit beyond that therapeutic technique. We're looking at sources that define acceptance not as something you do, but more as the fundamental nature of reality itself. We're really exploring the non-dual perspective here, which kind of shatters our assumptions about who is doing the accepting and what is being accepted.
It is. It's an immediate, almost seismic shift in framework, and it's really essential for you to grasp that right away. The source material insists that from this non-dual viewpoint, acceptance isn't effortful. It's not a choice made by some separate individual me. It is instead the direct recognition of what has always already been the case. We're moving from technique to, well, recognition.
Okay, so let's start there maybe by establishing the difference clearly. The conventional view, like we said, is that acceptance is powerful because it ends resistance. The separate individual, the me, stops fighting what is, maybe a chronic illness, a sudden loss, overwhelming anxiety, and finds some measure of peace.
And that conventional model provides immense relief. We shouldn't dismiss its power at all. But structurally, you see, it rests on two big assumptions. One, that there is a struggling individual, a me, and two, that this individual has the agency, the power, to choose acceptance over resistance.
Right. And this is exactly where the non-dual challenge comes in, right at the root.
Yeah.
The whole no self-insight. I mean, for most of our lives, we operate as if we are this solid, enduring entity inside our heads, the CEO of our experience, the I directing traffic.
Yes, exactly. That feeling of solid individuality is incredibly powerful. It's very convincing. But when you look closely, really investigate, what is the I? The sources point out that the self is more like an agglomeration, a collection of thoughts and sensations. It's a mental construct that arises and passes away. You have thoughts that claim ownership, like I am feeling frustrated or I made that mistake, but no enduring, consistent entity, no separate thinking self can actually be located. There's just awareness, you could say, in which all these phenomena appear.
But hang on, if there's no separate self, if the I is an illusion, then who is suffering? Because suffering certainly feels real. That's where I think most people get tripped up.
That's a critical question, absolutely. The experience of suffering is undeniably real. But non-dually, the suffering isn't owned by anyone. It's a set of sensations and thoughts, a phenomenon appearing in awareness. Just like the sound of a bird outside or the sensation of touch on your skin, the suffering often intensifies precisely because a thought arises that claims it. I am suffering. And that thought creates the feeling of isolation, of struggle against the experience.
Ah, okay. So if the self dissolves, then the entire premise of acceptance as an action I take, that just dissolves with it. It stops being something I choose to do.
Absolutely, exactly. Acceptance then is simply the inherent condition of reality itself. Everything, the pain, the emotion, the difficult circumstance, is already appearing in awareness without needing some illusory manager inside to sign off on it, Even the thought, I should be more accepting right now, is just another thought arising. And guess what? It's already accepted by the field of awareness in which it appears.
Wow. Okay, so once we dissolve the self, we naturally have to look at what that means for our relationship to everything else, the world. Which brings us neatly into the source's second big point, dissolving the illusions of the other and control.
Yes, the no other concept. It directly challenges that subject-object split we constantly experience. We normally assume there's a perceiver, me, interacting with the perceived world, the situation, the other person, the event. This split makes acceptance feel like a necessary bridge you have to build. The feeling of, I must build up the tolerance to accept this external thing.
So what happens when that division collapses? When there's no me and not me?
Well, when it collapses, all experience is revealed as just, seamless, an indivisible whole. Everything appearing, sound, sensation, memory, that person across the room, is not separate from all that is. It's all just this. So acceptance is no longer an act of tolerance towards something external. It's simply the recognition that everything appearing is inherently unified. It couldn't be otherwise. If there's no real other, then there's nothing separate to resist or push away in the first place.
And that connects directly to that core human impulse that creates so much suffering, the illusion of control. We desperately cling to the idea that we can and should manage life according to our preferences.
We really do, and that clinging generates resistance every single time life fails to conform to our mental blueprint, our expectations. The source material emphasizes just how deep this illusion goes. We believe we make decisions, right? But when you trace those decisions back, really look at their origins. They're revealed to be spontaneous arisings. They're influenced by countless preceding causes, conditions, momentary impulses, things we're not even aware of.
So the very idea that I am choosing to accept or I am choosing to let go, that's fundamentally flawed because the choice itself just arose spontaneously.
Exactly. From this view, acceptance isn't a choice you make. It's more like a surrender into what is already happening, because there is no separate controller making choices, and consequently, there's no alternative path life could possibly be taking. The entire flow is already accepted just by virtue of it happening.
Okay, but that feeling of resistance, that gut level no to a situation, it feels incredibly immediate and personal. So if there's no controller and everything is already accepted, why do we generate such powerful patterns of resistance? It feels so real.
Yeah, resistance feels real because it's the mechanism of thought creating separation and preference. That's its job, in a way. It's the mind comparing the current moment against an imagined should, like, this job shouldn't be so hard, or I shouldn't feel this anxious. That comparison, that judgment, generates the specific emotional charge, the anger, the anxiety, that creates the felt experience of a separate self struggling against an external world.
So the resistance isn't really the problem, it's the comparison driving it.
Precisely. And here's the really profound paradox the sources highlight. Resistance itself is simply another arising in awareness. It's just another phenomenon appearing. It doesn't actually need to be eliminated or fixed. The thought, I can't accept this, or that feeling of tension in your chest, it's already included in the vast open field of awareness. When you truly see that the resistance isn't some personal failure, but simply another appearance, like a cloud passing, it starts to lose its power to reinforce that illusion of a separate struggler.
This brings us nicely to section 3, and this fascinating deep dive into the nature of thought itself. The source material explains why peace can never be permanently located in the process of thinking.
That's right. Thought operates by evaluation, by categorization, by comparison, which means its very structure is inherently restless. It's always looking for the next thing. The source actually calls this structural restlessness fetter 9, which basically means the mind is constantly searching for fault or figuring out the next thing to be done or achieved. It's like a feature, not a bug, of the thinking mechanism.
I find this idea incredibly relatable, because the dissatisfaction never really ends, does it? Even when circumstances are objectively pretty good, like take the simple example of temperature.
Exactly. The mind is never perfectly satisfied for long. If you feel slightly cool, the mind immediately says, I need to be warmer. So you adjust the thermostat, but then maybe 10 minutes later, the mind often shifts to, now it's actually a bit too hot, or the air feels too dry now.
Yeah, or the same thing with basic needs like hunger. When you're hungry, the mind is totally driven. I need food, I must find satisfaction. Then you eat. And the satisfaction lasts, maybe 5 minutes before the thought kicks in, oh, shouldn't have eaten so much, or, right, I need to plan dinner for tomorrow. The mind's already moved on.
And this cycle applies everywhere, like work and rest. When you're fully engaged in work, the mind whispers, I need a break, I need some freedom. But the moment you get that rest, that freedom, the comparison engine starts right up again. I really should be productive, or I feel like I'm wasting time. It never stops.
So this endless cycle really reveals that true, lasting peace can't depend on getting external arrangements just right. Because the mind's job, essentially, is to continually find fault and create the next preference. Peace, therefore, must be located somewhere else. Somewhere prior to all that mental activity.
It has to be. The core insight here is that peace is the awareness itself, the space in which all that restless thinking arises and passes, fundamentally unaffected by the content of the thoughts.
Okay, now for the final paradox, this is one listeners always ask about, I think. If acceptance is already the fundamental state, if nothing needs to be done because everything is already accepted, then why do practices like mindfulness or inquiry exist at all? And why do they often seem genuinely helpful?
Yes, the paradox of practice. It's really about the distinction between creation and revelation. Practices don't create acceptance, they don't manufacture it, they simply help loosen the grip of the thought patterns that obscure what is already true. They clear to view, so to speak. So the practice isn't about manufacturing some desired state of mind like, now I feel perfectly accepting. It's more about allowing awareness to recognize the mental patterns, the comparison, the judgment, the identification with thought for the fleeting constructions that they actually are.
So the practical application then, even when you're using non-dual reflections or maybe those inquiry worksheets, it isn't really about achieving a specific result, but simply observing what's happening right now.
Exactly that. The effort, if you can call it that, is in observation, not in rectification or fixing. It's about noticing the shoulds and shouldn'ts without feeling compelled to satisfy them, noticing that there isn't a solid self having the thought, and critically recognizing that everything, including the feeling or thought of resistance itself, is simply appearing in awareness. This is what sources often call seeing through the illusion.
This whole deep dive really is a profound shift, isn't it? Acceptance isn't some spiritual achievement you attain or a therapeutic goal you finally reach. It's just the inherent reality of existence. When there's no self and no other, everything is already included in the flow.
It really changes how you relate to every moment of struggle, doesn't it? Radical acceptance, non-dually, isn't about exerting effort or trying harder. It's about seeing. It's the simple, direct recognition that everything appears without any exception. Everything belongs.
That distinction, seeing versus doing that, feels like the most challenging part of this whole framework. It forces us to stop treating our suffering like some kind of personal project that needs fixing.
Indeed. We stop trying to manipulate the content of our experience, trying to rearrange the furniture in the room, so to speak. And instead, we just rest in the container, the awareness itself.
And that leaves you, the listener, with a powerful thought to take forward from this deep dive. Since we've seen that peace can't really be located in achieving a perfect arrangement of circumstances, because thought will always find fault, that's its restless nature, how does the recognition that all thought, even the thought of resistance, is already accepted? How does that change your approach to your next difficult emotion? You try to fix it, analyze it, get rid of it, or perhaps just observe it as another appearing phenomenon already held in awareness.
We invite you to explore that recognition this week. Thanks for joining the deep dive.